Hi everybody, this is Tate again. I want to talk about, we found out today something really weird, that a lot of people don't know how to use a tape measure. So this is odd to me because this is something that everybody should know how to use. So I want to kind of go over what a tape measure is, how it's set up, at least for America. They have metric tape measures in other countries because they don't know how to use the right measurements. And kind of how our tape measure is set up here and some tips and tricks on how to use them after the fact. So kind of some things you can get from that. So first, let's talk about the anatomy of a tape measure, okay? So usually you're gonna get two different types of tape measures. Either the push lock system, which is you can pull it out, it stays in place, push it, and it drops back down. Really kind of a neat system. This is another one that's real popular, which is just the standard push lock, where it actually is gonna push down and lock in place. And to release it, it won't come in or out. You have to actually pull up and release it. Now, this particular tape measure has your pointer finger. You're able to stop it and just hold it in place. So I really like that, okay? So these are some things to look out for, kind of when you're buying them, kind of different, sometimes you'll look at them, they all look exactly the same. Usually it's the two different locking mechanisms. Next is gonna be how the actual tip is designed here. Now, most of the tips nowadays have gone to this newer style that has grips on the top and the bottom. Now what this is for is so you can hook onto something up and straight, on there. Some of them are not created equal though. Like this particular tape measure has almost nothing. This tape measure makes it really easy to grab onto. So if I'm cutting drywall, I can actually pull it out, lock it in place where I want it, and I can put my razor knife and I can actually hook my finger right off that. So if you're a drywall guy, you definitely want this. Now when it comes to this guy here, I've seen people lock this guy in place, okay? This little tab here is what we're hooking off of things, and it moves. And I've seen guys actually pound them flat so they won't move. Do not do that, okay? It is meant to move. It moves the thickness of the blade. So if you're pushing up against something, it adjusts the thickness of here. When you pull on something, it pulls out the thickness of this blade, keeping your measurements the same all the way down. Pretty simple, huh? Don't lock that down. Very important that moves and moves freely, and I like the 3-pin system. That just seems to work the best. Now, because tape measures sometimes can be hard to read, and I don't know if you guys will be able to see this or not, but I put cheater. I always buy a cheater tape measure. I like these, so if I have to pass this to somebody that's not really good with their fractions, it has the fractions right on here, and that goes on this one, I think all the way. So at least the first 10 feet here. So meaning that I have my standard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all my increments in eighths all the way up through there. Now, other tape measures you can actually get will actually have the numbers on the back also. That's really helpful if you're pulling a long distance and the tape measure is kind of folding as it goes. So definitely think about that. But I think this is probably the most, for beginner users or even people that just don't want to do a bunch of fractions at the end of the day, it has all the fractions listed right on there. So that's something to think about. Picking the right size tape measure. Please buy the size you're going to need. There's no reason to have a 32-foot tape measure if all you do is measure pipe all day long. So that's what I do. I'm an electrician. So I need a tape measure technically about 10 feet long. So I always buy 16-footers. I always keep a 25 and a 32 in the truck if I need it. But 99.9% of the time, I'm using a 16-footer. So DeWalt, Milwaukee, buy a good quality tape measure. You're going to be that's important. And then buying 2 tape measures that match. So if you're working with somebody and maybe I'm yelling down measurements down to them, I always keep a set of tape measures in the truck. So I have matching sets for each one of these tape measures in the truck so that I can throw that other tape measure down to them and say, hey, use this tape measure because that's going to be really similar, okay? So that's kind of the anatomy of a tape measure. Also, you will usually see one number on the back here. I'm going to kind of bring it in so you can see that. And that measurement says, right on there, it says 3 inches or 76 millimeters for our friends not in America. That is the distance from the back of the tape measure to the front of the tape measure. I have never seen that to be useful at all, but that's what that measurement is for on the back. So meaning that if I have to measure up to something, I'm trying to measure in a window, and I don't need a real precise measurement, I can sit there and use the actual tape measure itself, and I can put it up against the back here, put it here, and then just add 3 inches to whatever number I get. Okay? Which is kind of why I like this one that kind of locks in place, because then I can use that, lock it in place, and then pull it back and then read the measurements, if that makes sense. So instead, kind of my first trick, if you have to measure a window, which is really common, remember, whenever we're measuring an open box, like a doorway or anything like that, we want to measure it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. What I'll usually do is always, whenever I'm measuring, I can either put a piece of tape on the wall, maybe some blue painter's tape, and I'll mark out 10 inches. So I'll come off this side. You can do 12 inches, whatever makes sense to you. I'll mark out for this one, I'm just going to mark out 4 inches. Then when I make my other measurement, I come right here to the edge. So 12 plus 4, we're at 16 inches, and we've got the whole measurement. And I'm dead on perfect because I went into the corner here, and I went into the corner here. What will happen a lot of times is if you have to fold it into the corner, you're going to get these measurements that are sometimes a little off. And it's because you weren't able to go all the way out to both edges because you were bending it into the corner, and it never really bends perfect 90s unless you're going to break your tape measure. So keep that in mind there. Then how do we read a tape measure? Why in America do we use the imperial system, some people call it, or SEE, whatever it would be? So it's because everything is dividable in half, okay? That's why everything's built on our standard, because the reason everything's built in halves. It makes it super easy to do. I have 1 foot equals 12 inches, okay? If I do multiple feet, I just cut them in half. 12 inches in half, so half of 12, 6, a quarter of that is 3, an eighth of that is 1 1/2, 16th of that is 3/4, and then 4 on and down and on down. Now, tape measures are based on the little marks in your tape measure. So I'm going to show you guys kind of how it is on this one, because you guys can actually see it. But we go on our first, the smallest measurement is a 16th. The next measurement is an 1/8. So the small line, so when you're looking at a tape measure, it has your basic 1-inch lines. You'll have a little small line, and then you'll have a bigger line. That bigger line will be an 1/8. Okay, and then as it goes, 2/8 is a quarter, and so on and so on. So it makes it real easy. But I recommend buying these tape measures right off the bat that have them all on there. It makes it really simple to understand the 1/8 and 16th. So most tape measures are done in that 1/8 and 16th. You can get finer tape measures for finer work. But that's kind of what you're going to get at like your Home Depots, things like that. Woodworking stores might even get into going down from there. Now what's really easy, what happens if I'm in between, I'm trying to make a real precise measure between 1 and that line, the next line would be a 16th. What about in between there? I just take it and cut it in half again. Now it's a 32nd, so it's 1/32. So from there, I'm able to do a lot of different divide, super easy, okay? So this is why we use this system. It's halves, everything's half. Half of an 1/8, a 16th. Quarter, so when I get into quarters, half of a quarter is an 1/8. Half of an 1/8 is a 16th. Half of a 16th is a 32nd. That makes it super easy to find precise measurements on a tape measure. Now, kind of some tricks here, guys. A little bit more anatomy here. So let's say that I need to make a measurement way far out there, but every single time I hook it on something, it falls off. This is where your tape measure comes into play. It has a little groove right there in the tip. That is for a nail or a drywall screw to fit in there. And that allows you, no matter if you move or whatever it is, it stays hooked on that little tip there. Super invaluable. So if I need to come off an edge here, and I'm on, like, let's say we're on the edge of a roof or something like that, we're not able to, find the edge. I may move over 3 inches, put my nail, and then I can go all the way out to the edge of the roof, solid, without it popping off. And it will keep on there even if it's really, windy or whatever, it won't pop off. Sometimes it'll pop off on the edge. Sometimes it won't stay on that edge. You can do it on a nail, always works perfect, okay? Now when it comes to the next thing here is what can I use that for the second part, which is making radiuses. And this is something we do a lot, which is I can put a nail in the center of my board and I want to make a 4-inch radius. I can hook it on there. Then I actually take my marker and just spin around it. Now there's not a marker there, but basically I'm able to just take my marker here and spin around with my marker held up against it, and I can make radiuses all the way around. This is really helpful if you're making curved walls, all those kind of things. Sometimes in areas where you have to do it for radiuses that are really, not super precise, but we need basic sizes. This works really well, okay? Next thing. So this is probably one of my favorite tricks of all time. So I have 40 inches, okay? So I have my 40-inch mark, and I want to take 3 inches off that. I'm going to add 2 2x4s onto that wall, and I need to be able to deduct that. Come over here, 40 inches. So I put my tip of my tape measure on 40, and I deduct 3 off there, and I lay them up against each other. That is going to be 37 and 3/16 for 3 inches. No math, no nothing, just we're able to do it. Same thing, I want to do 7 inches off. I come over here, that 7 inches would be 33 and 1/8. And that's perfect for construction math. There's no reason to be any more precise. We're not building pianos, guys, we're building houses, okay? So definitely something there. When it comes to doing in half, so if I needed a quick measurement in half, I can actually put the 2 measurements together. So I've got 47, I want to find half of 47. I can look straight down the center, and sometimes that's close enough for me. I get 23 and a half. So makes it real simple, and you can do it for all different measurements and it will change a little bit, but it's not a precise measurement, but works really good for that kind of a situation. So we have that. We've got those measurements there. We're spinning over. We're able to adjust and use it basically like a slide ruler for you guys that actually remember what slide rulers are without a calculator. So your phone dies on the job, what do you do? And that makes it a lot easier there. Now, we've talked about what the tip's for, what that's good for, why it should move, what we can do. We can do radius, we can do other cuts. Now, this is kind of the last one that's really, I think, probably our best drywall tool and also our best tool for measuring anything where I need to take, and I'm going to cut a little bit off the top of this. So if I had a piece of plywood or drywall and I needed to take a couple inches off here and I want to mark all the way down and I don't have a straight line or straight edge, I can sit there, put my finger on 5, put my marker, my crayon or whatever that is, or a knife if I was using drywall, and I can put my finger right up against that, clip onto that guy, and I can just pull myself back. And you have a perfectly straight line all the way down. Then I can go ahead and cut that, or I can snap it if I was doing drywall. No drywall ever uses a straight edge most of the time. They're going to do most of their cuts right there. We snap it, we can do that. It's a little easier if it's not 4 feet off the ground. But guys, tape measures are an invaluable tool. Teach it to your children. Stop teaching them how to do fractions with pies. Teach them how to do it with a tape measure, okay? This is really important stuff, guys. Definitely make sure you're doing that. Buy good quality tape measures, ones that are gonna last, that are not gonna fall apart. And you should be much better off, guys. So as always, have a great day.